Hi friends, I'm Felicia. Welcome back to my channel. I promised you guys like a month ago that I was going to do this video. And here it is. My favorites of 2020. In March, here we go. I'm very timely. This isn't really a numbered list. I don't actually know how many books are on this list. I just kind of put them in a pile. And that's how I'm going to talk about them. Try not to talk too long about them either. You know how long-winded I can be. First books that I'm going to talk about might be controversial. I don't know. The Arc of the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. I don't know what that was. Yes, all three of the books, the whole trilogy, makes it to my favorites because I was just absolutely hooked. I read them back to back, which usually doesn't happen, but I was so compelled to find out what was happening that I just kept reading until I finished the series, which is absolutely fantastic. Really fascinating discussions that appeal to all ages, I would say, not just young adult, but just in general. Fascinating themes about life and what is life, what is morality, who gets to decide what's moral, who gets to decide how meaningful a life is, how valuable a human life is, and it's just like super fascinating, and I was hooked. The next book is The Next Right Thing by Emily P. Freeman. And I love her podcast, even though I'm bad at listening to podcasts. Like, I probably actually haven't listened to the podcast in a year because I just would rather listen to audiobooks or music than podcasts. But I do like her podcast, love her writing, love her Instagram account. She's just a beautiful human. I want to support her. This is a book for people who are chronically indecisive, to help you learn how to listen to your soul, your brain, about decisions that you want to make. And I found it extremely helpful and could probably stand to read it again as a refresher. Love her writing too. She's a beautiful person. You should follow her. I read at the beginning of the year To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is the first time I've read this book and I loved it. It was fantastic. Can see why it's a classic, and it just gripped me. And I still think about it sometimes. Also, I read this with my book club, and we also ended up watching the movie with Gregory Peck, and the movie is also fantastic. See why it's a classic. Definitely. Well, yeah, holds up. Yes. Also, like, it just felt so relevant, you know, with everything that happened last year. So, still relevant and timely, which is disturbing because this is written in the 60s and set in the 30s. So, you know, people don't change. That's fine. Anyways. Next. This was a reread for me. And I was kind of surprised. Okay. Anne's House of Dreams by Ella Montgomery. This is book 5 in the Anne of Green Gables series. And last year I participated in the Anne Along, hosted by T and All the Books, Amanda the Curly Reader. Is that who hosted it? Those two ladies. So I've read this before. And I was shocked at how much I loved it this time. Like, this one now stands tied with the first book. Absolutely love it. And I could see myself coming back to just read this book just on its own. Like, if I need an Anne fix, I might not read book 1, I might read this one. So, I want to shout out once again, I have to do it. This beautiful cover, illustrated by Ellie Mackay. Check her out, she's great. Okay, the next one I want to talk about, just going on the pile. Walking on Water by Madeleine L'Engle. Reflections on Faith and Art. Even if you don't, but if you consider yourself a creative Christian or person of faith, doesn't have to be Christian, I guess. Madeleine L'Engle is a Christian, was a Christian. I think she's passed away. Like, I just found, like, I tabbed this, guys. I tabbed this. This isn't even my book. This is my mother-in-law's book. I have to give it back and buy my own copy because it was brilliant. And I found it so inspiring, just how she connected, like, being a Christian, being a person made in the image of God. God is a creator, and so we are inherently made to also be creative and make things. And just like the art of making is spiritual, and just like how she tied that all together, and I was like, yes, I love it. So I would highly recommend if you consider yourself a creative person. I'm not an artist, but I am a creative person, absolutely. So this was super good. Super good. I have to write down all my tabs so that I can take them out and give them back to my mom. Give the book back to my mom. Anyways, another potentially controversial pick. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Okay, listen. The Hunger Games is one of my absolute favorite series of all time. And I personally overlook all flaws. I actually don't see any flaws. The more I read it, the more perfect I think it gets. I think I've read it like 3 or 4 times. It gets more perfect every time. And this was it needed? No. But did it have good things to say? Yes. If you already watched my February wrap up and you heard my rant about Midnight Sun and how it doesn't need to exist or it needs to be different. This was like 500 pages and this was brilliant. I think it was maybe a little slow at times, but I also read this for the reading rush, so I read it really fast. So then that didn't really bother me, I guess. No, it just felt so appropriate. Again, with like the political situation in North America, the United States. And just some of the things that she was saying about like the people in control. And it was just fascinating. So, I loved it. Okay. Come at me, but Suzanne Collins does no wrong by my books. Except that she doesn't publish enough books. Let's talk about a book that I don't own. 2 books that I don't own. No. A book that I own, a book that I don't own, but the book that I own, my brother has it, I think. Those are Recursion and Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. They're not a series, they're both standalones, but I read both of them last year and I loved both of them. Sci-fi, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, absolutely love it. Hooked, want to reread them like immediately, like right now. I would like to reread them. Just crazy. Like, I don't know why I don't let myself do that actually. Like, when I'm enjoying a book and I finish it and I love it, sometimes I just want to read it again. And I never let myself do that. Why? Dumb. This TBR is ridiculous and it needs to die so that I can actually let myself do that. But anyways, oh, stickers! Hey! My sister-in-law sent me some Harry Potter stickers. I didn't know they were in that stack. That's so funny. Okay. We'll definitely be reading more. Whatever sci-fi Blake Crouch puts out from now on, definitely gonna read it. Another book that I read, that I don't own, that I would like to, is The Gospel Comes with a House Key by Rosaria Butterfield. Basically, she talks about how her and her family live radical hospitality and how she thinks that everyone should. Everyone that calls themselves a Christian should. And I actually found it really beautiful. And I mean, okay, so like, you know, pandemic times, not allowed to have people in our houses. Sorry, my earrings are actually really bothering my ear. I'm really sensitive to metal, and so I have to actually wear like nice earrings now, and these are not. I mean, I like them, but they need to have different hooks. Or like, you know, Chris, you can buy me earrings that are actually made out of silver that look like this for my birthday. Thanks. Ridiculous. Okay. Put those on my Harry Potter stickers. Okay. What was I talking about? The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Yeah, so she just talks about like how her and her family live radical hospitality, and I found it really convicting, first of all, and motivating for when I can actually have people into my house again. So yeah, would recommend if hospitality is something that you want to read about. Definitely read that one. Last year, I read Howl's Moving Castle for the first time and absolutely loved it. Yeah, that's why it's on my favorites list. I've seen the movie many times, the Studio Ghibli movie. Yikes. The book is amazing also. The movie is pretty faithful. There are some things that are different, but it was just such a fun fantasy story, and I ended up reading the next 2 books. I finished the series this year in January, but like equally loved the whole series. So, well, book 2 was not my favorite. I still really liked it, but like 1 and 3 were the best. But anyways, yeah. I only read book 3 this year, so I can't put it on the list, but it's on the list. So yeah, classic for a reason, guys. So read it if you like fantasy. I read this book for maybe Midrash, which I hosted with Jason and Steve last year. And this is still Notes on a Mid-Faith Crisis by Lauren F. Winner. So if you haven't read Lauren Winner, I would really recommend that you do. She has such a beautiful, sincere way of writing. And the way that she processes her thoughts is beautiful. And I wish that I could do the same. So essentially this is a memoir of the time in her life after her mom died and her marriage ended, and she is having a crisis of faith. Her backstory is that she was an Orthodox Jew and she converted to Christianity, and so now she's having a crisis of just everything. And just it was just beautiful and heart-wrenching. Just the way that she writes, it's just amazing. Like I can't put it into words how I feel about this book, how I feel about her writing. I just would really recommend that you do it. The other book that I read for maybe midrash last year, which was The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. I was a little bit hesitant to put it on this list because was it a favorite book of all time? I don't know. Was it even, like, was it actually really one of the favorite books that I read last year? I don't know, because this isn't really a book that you read for enjoyment, so it's kind of hard to say. But I am putting it on this list because I feel like I want to talk about it one more time, because it just really was, I don't know, exquisitely written. I don't know if that's an overstatement, but it's basically a story about, is it in the future? Yeah, it's in the future, where the Jesuit mission essentially trying to make first contact with an alien race. And so, this is not an easy book to read. It's really hard. There are lots of hard things that happen in this book. And yeah, just gut-wrenching things that happen. But, like, it just got me thinking. And every time I think about the book, I start thinking about the themes that were presented, what it's like to lose everything, what it's like to lose your faith in God. Did you even have the faith in the first place? Like, just all of these things that the author was exploring. It just blew my mind. So yeah, I will say again, not an easy book to read, but worth reading, I think, if you're willing to be unsettled. Was that a good sales pitch for the book? I don't know. Moving from that to Extreme Vinyl Cafe by Stuart McLean. And I just have to include this because every Vinyl Cafe book is my favorite. I don't know if they're not publishing these books anymore or whatever, which is disrespectful to Stuart McLean. Not quite sure what to say. If you haven't heard me talk about these books before, it's essentially a collection of short stories, vignettes from this little community. The main character, Dave, and his wife Morley, and his children, Sam and Stephanie. They're the main characters, but he does sometimes feature other characters in their neighborhood or, you know, characters that are connected to them. And it's just always heartwarming and funny. And I just love them. And like, just all of these books are my favorite every time I read them. So there you go. A book that you didn't hear me talk about last year, that I don't own, but I want to buy very badly, is The Murmur of Bees by Sofia Segovia. And I listened to the audiobook of this, which was wonderful. Finished it in December. And I didn't do a December wrap up. So there you go. Sorry. I hate you with my hand. So a little backstory why I decided to read this book, because I didn't get to tell you that in my wrap up. Basically one day I just wanted to read something set in Mexico. Is really it. My parents were both born and raised in Mexico, in the Mennonite colonies, in northern Chihuahua, close to Cuauhtemoc, if you know Mexico. That's close to where my parents grew up. And then they both of their families, roughly around the same time, moved to Manitoba in the 70s. Right before my parents got married. So they got married out here. They started dating in Mexico. Anyways, this is not a family history video. Anyway, so I just really feel like a connection to Mexican culture, even though I'm just like as white as they come. Anyways, I feel connected to Mexican culture. So I wanted to read a book set in Mexico. I wanted to read one written by a Mexican author. So I Googled and I found The Murmur of Bees by Sofia Segovia. And I actually then went on Goodreads and saw that Rincey had read this book. And I don't even think I read her or watched her review on it. I'm not sure. Okay, and like this is not set anywhere close to where my parents lived. But man, I got on Google Maps and I looked at the town where this book takes place, and it just like brought me right back to the last time that I was in Mexico, which was 2000. We were in Mexico for Y2K. I was so scared. I was like, we're in Mexico and everything's gonna go off the grid and I'm gonna die in Mexico. 11 years old. I did not die in Mexico. We were at my aunt and uncle's house over Y2K, New Year's Eve, 1999. This is story time now. Oh gosh. And my battery's gonna die again. So I was in my cousin's room and it was midnight, right before midnight, and I was staring at the nightlight, waiting for it to go out because of course the power grid was gonna shut off. Oh gosh. Like 11-year-olds. I was 11. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know that that wasn't real. I thought it was real. I thought it was gonna happen. Anyways, if you're too young for Y2K, good for you. So what was I saying? Okay, yeah. So I was in Mexico in 2000, and looking at this town on Google Maps just brought me right back. And I was like, dang, I want to go to Mexico. So maybe someday I'll go to Mexico, you know, when we can travel again. So yeah, this book is set in a little village called Linares in East Mexico, I think. East is that way actually from where I'm sitting. Anyways, wow. Basically, a baby is found in the bush and he has a cloud of bees around him. And so the people that find him adopt him and they name him Simonopio. And it's basically about this family who have adopted this little boy. So it's just like this faint magical realism because Simonopio he can't speak. He has a deformity in his cleft palate. I think he has like kind of a hole in his mouth, I think is how they describe it. So his cleft palate didn't form properly or whatever. So he can't speak because he can't actually form words with his mouth. But he has his own way of communicating. People always understand what he is communicating with his eyes. He always has bees around him. They're Simonopio's bees, and they never sting him. They never sting anyone that he likes. And it's just kind of that. And he's just kind of like this mysterious boy. So it kind of has like this little tinge of magical realism. But then also it's just this beautiful story about family. And I just absolutely adored it and would highly recommend. And it is set during the Spanish flu. A significant portion of the beginning, I'd say the first third, takes place during the Spanish flu, and it was just absolutely fascinating to read about like just how things were in that community during a pandemic. So in my quest for good pandemic books, I would say that this is one, although it's not really about that, but like, oh, just beautiful. So I would recommend it highly. I have 3 more books. Battery's gonna die. Let's see how fast I can go through them. Okay. North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I read this for the first time last year. Tabbed the heck out of it. Read this for book club and I loved it. I have seen the miniseries before with Richard Armitage, the BBC miniseries. But like, this was so good. So Austen-esque. I know now why everyone like that loves Jane Austen also likes Elizabeth Gaskell. And there's a scene in here that is so hilarious to me. It has to do with Mr. Thornton and a bus. And it's just hysterical to me. It's not even that long of a scene. I just cracked up. So definitely love this book. Should I tell you what it's about? I'm not gonna. It's about a woman who suddenly becomes unwealthy and her family moves to northern England and to this industrial town, and she thinks that things are terrible, and they are kind of terrible. but then she meets John Thornton. Okay. I'm done. Okay, second to last. The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. Are you surprised? You shouldn't be if you know how much I love her writing. So like I never, based on the plot, if you told me the plot and like I didn't already love Emily St. John Mandel, I wouldn't have picked this up. It has to do with a Ponzi scheme, essentially. This is the most basic way that I can say that. And it's about these people that are involved with the guy that's running it. And I mean, that's kind of a spoiler because you don't even know that until halfway through the book, but I just told you, and also the flap tells you. But yeah, her writing is just brilliant, exquisite. I've already used that word, but I just absolutely love her writing, and I just will read anything that she puts out because she is good. I just love Emily St. John Mandel. Okay. The last book that I'm going to talk about, Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. Did I also read this for maybe midrash? I think I did. So all of the books that I read for that are on this list. This is just like a quiet, unassuming book. It's written from the perspective of an old man writing a letter, writing his stories for his young son. He gets married and has a son. He gets married to a young wife and he has a young son while he is old. And he's just telling stories about his life. Also, he was alive during the Spanish flu. And I still think about how the author described it. I still think about that like every time I go shopping. Every time I hear someone complaining about the regulations. I'm like, this is how they dealt with it back then too. Okay, just, you know, whatever. That's only like a few pages. It's not significant. Most of it is just him telling stories about his life to his son because he doesn't expect to be around while his son gets old. So it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful writing. I'm very desperate to read more Marilynne Robinson. Yeah, I just really want to read more. I want to read this again. This was another book that I wanted to just reread immediately after I finished it. Those are all of my favorite books from last year. So not necessarily like all-time favorites, but like favorites of the ones that I read. Books that I really wanted to highlight again, I guess. I don't know. If you've read any of these books, please let me know. Or if now any of my blithering praise made you want to pick any of them up. But yeah, I hope that you are having a good day. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you guys in the comments. And I hope that you're having a good day. I hope that you're enjoying what you're reading. And until next time, so long and thanks for the fish.